Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Allie. Today's video is kind of like the last vlog I did in reverse. So this video was about me putting off reading books that I had kind of lost interest in. And this video is about me reading two books that I am dying to read. We have Out There by Kate Folk. These are short stories. I think they are sci-fi, maybe a little horror in it, maybe some romance. And then the Pallbearers Club, which I thought was a thriller. But then I think this might be a little bit, I don't know, a few genres, maybe a little horror. The thing I'm so excited for this is that there's like annotations in the text by someone who's like editing this. But today we're starting with Out There by Kate Folk. I put in all the little tabs for the 15 different short stories in here, and honestly, this is giving me life. Look how satisfying that looks, although I did bend a couple of them. So like I said, these will be science fiction, but I hear there's some really random, weird, bizarre things that are happening in this book. And for that, I am so deeply excited. The first story is called Out There. Obviously, it's the title story, and I believe that this was originally published in the New Yorker. So this story specifically is about a woman in San Francisco using dating apps to find a partner despite the threat posed by blots, which are preternaturally handsome artificial men dispatched by Russian hackers to steal data. And then it says in another of the short stories, there's a woman who actually falls in love with the plot. And then I think I heard someone's review saying that there's a story in here about something to do with organs in a very, like organs in your body. I'm pretty sure. Okay, wait, I'm just gonna stop talking until I read that. But let's read the first sentence of the first story. I was putting myself out there. That's perfect. Today I am going live on Meredith with Reading with Merb's channel. I've never gone live before and I am so weirdly nervous. We're going on in about an hour. I just finished work. She's doing some trivia games and some reading sprints. So if you like reading sprints, she does them quite a bit. So you should definitely check her out. I will link her down below.
Guys, Allie's here. You ready? Hi.
Oh my gosh, it's so close to my face.
It always goes to that setting automatically.
Oh my gosh.
What are you going to get up to during the sprint?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Guys, I'm so nervous. This is my first live anything, so go easy on me.
Roaster, guys.
I am going to be reading Out There by Kate Folk. They're short stories, sci-fi. It kind of goes with your background. Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, excuse the horrid lighting, but I figured I would come in and check off every 5 stories I read because there are 15 stories, so then I can update you 3 times. If you know how to do math, you already figured that out. So the first story is Out There, the namesake. Out There. And I feel like this gives you a good taste of the more contemporary aspects that it's talking about. So in this one, like I said, our main character is navigating dating life, but there's Russian. For some reason, I thought they were just like going to be on Tinder, like messaging, but they're actual like, I don't know if they're robots or actual beings, I don't know. But it's so funny because the blots, they're trying to get all this information from you to hack you and steal your credit card information and your identity. So they tend to ask a lot of personal questions and just seem a little overtly interested in your life. And so our main character is like trying to find selfish people. She starts dating this guy, and every time he doesn't ask her about her life or just kind of cuts her off or just acts like an asshole, she's weirdly pleased because it's like more evidence that he's not this blot. So in that case, it was really funny to read because it's like, what is settling? What is worth it to you in a relationship? So that was a really fun read, and there were several laugh out loud moments. If you guys want to read it, I think it's probably still online. Let me look it up real quick. Yeah, they have the story online. I will link it down below. There's also an audio part to it if you want to listen to it. I don't know if it's like completely the same or different, but it might give you a taste as to whether you might vibe with this. The second story is very short. It's called The Last Woman on Earth. It's about the last woman on Earth. There are no more women left. And so because she's the last one, she turns into this celebrity, and they just give her a talk show host. No, they give her a talk show and she's the host. And this goes on and on until she eventually, as we all do, die. I think it's saying a lot about gender, but also about like minority groups and how some people are, I don't know, just assholes with representation and things like that. You'll understand if you read the story, but I also really like that one. I feel like all of these are 5-star stories, which is pretty much unheard of. I feel like in every collection there's always like a stupid story or one that doesn't really connect with you. Obviously I still have 2/3 of the book to read. The third story was Heart Seeks Brain, definitely my favorite story. It's not even that long. So in this alternate reality, people find your organs to be the attractive part, and so you brag about the size of like your liver or your kidney or your small intestines, and everyone kind of has their own kink, and certain kinks are like more normal, like a liver kink or a kidney kink. I feel like I can't keep saying kink on YouTube. And when you get into a relationship, the only presents you really give each other to show your love is part of that organ that the other person wants. So if you marry a guy who's really into livers, you start giving him a piece of your liver or your liver, and you do this until one of you dies. And then you have another relationship. And it sounds horrific and gross, but it's told in such a matter-of-fact way, because just this is how these people live, that it doesn't really feel that jarring. The craziest part is that like our narrator for this story, she's really into brains, and she really wants to fall in love with a guy who's really into hearts. And she says, "My ideal relationship would be with a heart man who possesses a powerful, methodical brain, preferably an expert in some STEM discipline. My dream is that we will marry and he will allow me to take his brain from him year after year, a tiny bit at a time, through shock treatments and partial lobotomies until he can't function on his own, and I have to care for the drooling husk of his body until it expires. It is only for this that I'd surrender pieces of my literal heart." She's also saying that her friend, who's kind of just sounds like a frenemy, this toxic kind of bitch sounding girl, she said she used to make a sport of telling guys that she was into livers just to see what a guy will do for me. She has jars at home in a mini fridge. It was like a sport in my 20s. Once I had a piece of their liver, I lost interest. I knew I had them. So yeah, that one was crazy and very short, but just the idea of it is, I don't know. Then we have The Void Wife, which is cool in concept as well. It's kind of like The Fold, if you've watched or read, what is it? The Shadow of Bone? Oh my gosh, you guys are gonna come for me for not knowing this. Leigh Bardugo's, oh my gosh. Yeah, Shadow and Bone. I think I said that. What is it? The Shadow of Bone? Anyway, so there's this like, the fold, the shadow, I forget, the void. And it started on a strip of land, and it's like slowly increasing, and everything that comes into it kind of pixelates and disappears. And so people are thinking that if you leave in the void, if you're touching someone, you end up having eternal life forever with that person. And some people believe it and some people don't. And so our main character is trying to flee from it, but then she kind of acquiesces, and she has like this person she's just kind of spending time with just because like she doesn't want to be alone. And then the 5th story is called Shelter. I don't know how interested you are in going story to story, if that's considered a spoiler for you for short stories, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it. So let me know your preferences below for future videos on short stories. The 5th one is the weirdest in that I don't understand it. It's also weird because of its kind of sexual nature. So we have our main character who is stuck in this small town, and she's from the city. She's there with her boyfriend or fiance or something. For a living, she's the person who makes up the really corny titles of porn videos. I'm not gonna say that word again on YouTube, okay? I'm sorry. Because she does it for a living, she's not even fazed by it. And this was so funny to read because she was reading some of the captions and she was just equating it to like making recipes. I don't know, it was just funny. But then at the same time, she has this, I don't know what it is. It's like a shed, but it has a door and a lock, and it's stuck. And I think that's like a metaphor for her life and maybe her sexual life, maybe her relationship. And it was just kind of weird. There's actually kind of a twist in this, which is a little Edgar Allan Poe-ish. Yeah, that was interesting. So those are the first 5 stories, and from them I can see kind of a theme, especially just like the men in these stories are just so kind of lackluster and just very average or less than average. I mean, even the women, they're not like the heroes of the story. They're also very flawed and sometimes immature. But I feel like it's really talking a lot about settling in a relationship or relationships failing because you want different things. And that part of it, as a contemporary lover, I'm really fascinated by. I feel like this is really funny. It's very sexual, but also not. And I really like the random sci-fi stories like The Void or The Last Woman on Earth, like what if situations. It really does feel like this book, which I read in this video, which I'll link up here. However, Sayaka Murata is very kind of asexual in her stories, so much so that there is a very sexual story in here, but it doesn't feel sexual at all. It just feels clinical, which is part of the bizarreness of the situation. So this is kind of similar to Life Ceremony, except for this is the asexual version and this is the very sexual version. I mean, there's not like crazy amounts of graphic sex in here, so don't go looking for that. But it's just like, that's a theme in the book. Okay, I just read the next 5. And honestly, I think that if you are like new to sci-fi or horror elements, this is not horror, but there's that kind of bizarre element that's in horror that's a little bit in here. I think you should try this book, because it's all very approachable. Feels very much just like a character going through anything that you or I might go through, although most of the main characters are problematic. Just remind me of, I don't know, being stupid and young. But if you're more a contemporary person, I think you should possibly check this out, even if you're not into sci-fi. Okay, so story 6 is called The Head in the Floor, and this is a pretty short story. It's all short stories about a girl, and in her apartment there's like this mossy soft growth happening on the floor. It's like a head coming out of the floor. In this one, the character has very much a voice. She says like a lot, which I do too if you haven't been watching my videos. This one part made me LOL because she's trying to get some guy to come check this out for her. So she's going through the last of the people she knows, and she says, "The last number of my phone of a man who did not yet know me well enough to hate me was Brandon, who I probably went on some sort of date with at some point in my life. I think Brandon said we should hang out again, and I was like, yeah. And then when he named an actual day of the week, I never responded and deleted all our texts." That sounds horribly like something I would want to do. The next story is also very short. It's called Tahoe. And it's about our main character who's recounting this trip to Tahoe with their friends. And it sounds rambly at first, like they can't remember who did what, even if they were injured or they were doing something that sounds like you would very much be remembering this. And it sounds like it's just gonna be one of those stories that's like, what's the point of this? And then it kind of got really dark. The next one I think was the longest so far. It's called The Bone Ward. It was really interesting. Our main character is in this medical ward, and she's in the wing for people who have this disease where your bones kind of disintegrate at night and then they regrow in the morning. But she's in there, she's the only woman in there. She has like a little love interest, and then a new very, very pretty woman comes in, and so she's battling with jealousy and feeling inadequate and feeling replaced. Wow, this is actually kind of the scariest ending. Then we have Doe Eyes, which was so weird. So this is one of the stories like the Tahoe story and Shelter, where it's not sci-fi at all as far as we know. So this is really about a woman who has separated from her husband. She's obviously thinking about it a lot. She's living with her dad, and there are deer everywhere, and they're being shot, like hunted by hunters. Oh, this is actually kind of like an unsettling ending as well. And then the last story I just read was The House's Beating Heart, which also sounds reminiscent of a Poe story. And I feel like this is a third story that's had to do with a house being personified. And this is really like the house has actual literal organs. And I think it's a group of like graduate students, their realization that the house has organs, and then they're mistreating the house. This one is really short, like 2 or 3 pages. So yeah, still really loving this. And then I read the blurb on the top when I was taking an Instagram photo. Chang Ray Lee, not sure who that is, says, "This is wondrously perverse, often creepy and hilarious, and always sneakingly heartbreaking." And that is exactly the best description of this book. So now I'm gonna read the last 5 stories. I'm actually really sad that this is coming to an end. I'm so excited. Well, I'll wrap it up at the end, but so far, this has been amazing. I'm finished! Okay, the last 5 stories. Okay, so first there is a scale model of Gull Point, and this is a strange story. So it's almost an apocalyptic story. This woman gets a prize journey to Gull Point. It's like a made-up island in the Gulf Coast next to Tampa, except this place is wild. It's like Fire Festival on crack. It's a crazier Las Vegas. and the people that work there in the tourist shops and the t-shirt shops, the brothels, it's like everyone has been taken advantage of there for the sake of tourism. And so there's like this revolution that's happening, but she goes there anyway, and she gets stuck in this like Space Needle with a bunch of other people. She's also a sculpturist, so she kind of makes art telling the truth of what has happened here, and it's actually kind of a heartbreaking ending. Then the next one is Dating a Somnambulist. This one was actually pretty funny. It's told entirely in second person, and it's about this girl who has this boyfriend who has this disease, like a sleeping disorder called somnambulism, I don't know. While he's sleeping, he does really weird things and he brings things to the bed. So at first it's like a handful of M&Ms, and then it's like a raccoon. And then it's just funny how it spirals out of control, and it gets very specific, including the silver top worn by model Giselle Bundchen in Alexander McQueen's groundbreaking spring 1998 fashion show. I just love the specificity of that sentence. I laughed out loud. Then there was Moist House, which was so interesting, and I feel like the stories, what is this, the fourth one, that's been about houses having this personality or bodily things. This man goes to this house and he doesn't have to pay rent, but he has to moisturize the house, like the walls, with special heavy-duty moisturizer, but it's really expensive. The man in question, our main character, our narrator, is a guy I think that's been accused of workplace harassment or using his power inappropriately towards his assistant. Of course, he was married, so his marriage is in shambles, his reputation is in shambles, and he goes to this house. And it's just a crazy story. It has a lot to say about gender, and wow. Then we have the turkey rumble, which is also very funny. So in this case, our main character is named Zach, and he goes to his boyfriend's parents' house for Thanksgiving, and I guess their tradition is that they pick names out of a hat, and whoever you get, you have to surprise each other with minor injuries. So in the past, you just burn people with a lighter, push people down basement stairs, just sock them in the stomach. How this ends is crazy. How the boyfriend ends up dealing with it, our main character. And the last sentence is so funny and is a pretty good twist. And then the last story, called Big Sur, takes everything full circle. And we're back in the same world as the first story out there, where we're dealing with blots and dating and in the streets of San Francisco. We even see a couple characters we were introduced to, including Roger, one of the blots. This story is dual perspective. We get the perspective of a blot named Roger, and then a woman named Meg, who is, there's like a weird romance between them. And this was so wholesome, and it's so funny. Our blots are reading Haruki Murakami. It came out several times. They were quoting to each other. Oh my gosh. And I feel like it was a really hopeful turn of events, and kind of a hopeful but sad, and it's just everything I want in a short story. All of these were. Honestly, 5 stars, first of all, but I think it's one of the best short story collections I've ever read because every single story brought it. It was all very cool concepts. It was all very provoking. And the best part about short stories, I'm sure if you've watched any of my videos where I talk about short stories, is that detached feeling where you kind of feel like sad because you're thinking about life in weird, empty, I'm gonna shut up now. But this was just amazing. It was amazing, and I think you should check it out. I cannot wait for Kate Folk to write literally anything else. And now, because I'm trying to finish these books before the end of the month, tomorrow is the 31st. I'm gonna start the Pallbearers Club tonight. I have so been looking forward to this, and I almost wanna pause because I just wanna think about that book some more. But I feel like I'm really gonna love this too. I forget if I told you anything about this in this video, but this is a story about a man named Art, and this is his memoir about his time back in the 80s as a kid and how he was in the Pallbearers Club. They volunteered their time to be pallbearers for people who didn't have family and stuff like that. And he meets a girl, I think she works in like a funeral home, I'm not too sure. And she is making edits on this memoir. I've already gotten a little bit of a spoiler on this. However, people are talking about it so casually that I'm not even sure it's a spoiler. However, it's not in the flap. So I'm gonna get into it, and if it's mentioned in the first 15 pages, I really don't think it's going to be. So I'm gonna keep my mouth shut. However, my intrigue is heightened. Let's read the first sentence. Also, I might try to find the audiobook of this somewhere because Books and Lala just recently read that. She gave it 5 stars, which I get FOMO when people read books before me, especially ones that I've been highly anticipating. So I'm a little FOMO'd out right now. Kayla with Books and Lala said that the audiobook does a really good job interweaving the edits like with the regular text. So I'm kind of interested to see what it's like. I think I showed this in, I hauled this in one of my weekly vlogs or just a random vlog, but this is like the start of the memoir. And then this is the dedication, like the actual dedication of this book. And it says, for Lisa, Cole, and Emma. And then this girl writes, who are they? I think that's so funny. First chapter, If I Told You, 2007. The first sentence is, I am not Art Barbara. I'm gonna keep reading because I just wanna know. That's not my birth name, but at the risk of contradicting myself within the first few lines of a memoir, I am Art Barbara. Ooh, I'm intrigued. And I hear the coolest thing about this is that it is kind of speculative, just hinting to a little something extra. Okay, I'm gonna start reading. Guys, I haven't read shit tonight, but I'm watching the new Pretty Little Liars like reboot. This is just a straight up horror movie. 2 people are dead within the first 8 minutes. If you just watch the intro video, oh, that is the scariest shot I've ever seen. Guys, they are not fucking around. So this is the A from the original series. And this is the A of the new series. I think I just pooped myself. I don't know, guys. I like how scary it is. Usually I don't like scary movies or scary shows, but I like the level of scariness, but there's also a level of cringe in there that I'm not sure I can handle. Let me know if you've watched the first episode and if you watched the original series. I mostly watched the original series because I was obsessed with all of their outfits. Not gonna lie. Guys, Kayla with Books and Lala just put up a vlog, and guess what book she is reading? That's right. That is right. Also, she just mentioned the spoiler that I thought was a spoiler in the first 3 minutes of this video. So I'm gonna watch her video and then maybe I'll share it with you because it is a very intriguing spoiler. I don't know. I'm gonna go ahead and say the spoiler because I feel like too many people have mentioned it now. It can't be that big of a deal, but if you don't wanna know, skip ahead 15 seconds. Apparently there are vampiric things happening in this book. I think the main bitch, the one making the edits, is possibly a vampire, but is never really said out loud in any specific way. So there you go. Okay, just kidding. I can't watch her review or her vlog of reading that book, or else I'll start thinking about it and then I don't want to like change my perception at all. I do know she gave it 5 stars because I saw it on Goodreads. So if you're interested in watching it, which I will be doing immediately after I finish the book, I'll link the video down below. Okay, I got to page 27 and so far it is just really fun, but also creepy. So we have Art Barbara, who is writing this memoir, and he's very much in his element right now, recounting his childhood, his teenage life in 1988. He's come up with this club and he goes to his first Pallbearer volunteer thing. So 1 boy and 1 girl from his school volunteered to do it with him. It's the first time he's ever seen a dead body. But overall, Art Barbara's memory of himself is kind of funny in that he's being very almost poetic about it, like trying to derive meaning into things that, as far as I know, is just trying to make it more artsy. And then at the end of the chapter, we get the editor's notes, this mystery woman who I think we're going to meet very soon. And I think she is kind of calling him out. She hasn't had too many like interruptions in his chapters, mostly just sticks to the end of it, but she's funny. So at the end of chapter, 2, she says, "This chapter is a little woe is me, don't you think? I'm not judging and I'm not belittling your school age experience nor your state of mental health. But by way of perspective, you had white cis male privilege, did not grow up in poverty, and you did not suffer tragedies during childhood, not that I'm aware of anyway." The next chapter we're about to start, it says, "A chapter in which I make a strange friend." And she's made an edit and she just says, "You're strange," because he's clearly talking about her. So this is a lot of fun so far. Guys, this is so funny. Okay, so Mercy is the girl's name. That's what he's named her in this memoir, but he's made it a point to say that none of the names are true. And she had something to say about his naming her Mercy. But he's meeting her for the first time, and he's describing her. He explains what she's wearing, and then he says, aside from the lack of hairspray and makeup, her appearance was otherwise not remarkable. And then he says, I'm not trying to be judgy, blah, blah, blah. And then he says, let me try again. She says, please do. And he starts again. She is roasting him. So she gave him this mixtape back when he was, 17? And it was Hooks or Do. I don't know, whatever this band is. And it was all their songs. And apparently he's been titling the chapters after each one of the songs. She says, aw, it's endearing. And also, given that you're pushing 50 years old, maybe a wee bit pathetic. Okay, I'm gonna talk about that spoiler again, so skip forward 20 seconds if you don't wanna hear it. There are sort of hints to the vampire thing, and I'm so pissed because if I hadn't heard that, I would not be putting it together. So I'm actually kind of pissed. Okay, so some things about this book. First of all, the 80s references there's so many of them, they're so good. If you like 80s vibes, then you should definitely read this book. But I feel like it's also giving a great account of a teenager, even though like a 50-year-old man is writing it. But it's perfectly encapsulating the awkwardness of being a teenager and being like paranoid and overanalyzing everyone's responses to you to see if they're actually making fun of you. Okay, I'm gonna continue reading this. I'll probably only update you maybe 3 more times. I'll split it up, but I'm having so much fun so far. Oh, and the only other thing is that I think this was written, like Art Barbara is writing this in 2007 about his time in the 80s, but he makes notes in 2012 and 2017, and he seems to be very bitter in 2017. Okay, I've gotten to page 133. It's about halfway. And he has graduated, our main character Art has graduated high school, and he's had surgery on his scoliosis. And honestly, I don't think the spoiler that I talked about earlier, that's probably annoying you at this point, if you're still watching. I don't know if it is a spoiler because it's very much, okay, I'm not gonna say it because I said I wouldn't say it, but there's something going on with this friend Mercy and him, and I don't know what's going on, and I feel like it should be obvious. And there's something being unsaid, and I like it. I like this mounting mystery feeling that feels obvious, but clearly isn't, because in Mercy's notes just now, she said, I get it, you can't give everything away too early. You're smarter than you look. And for some reason, I thought this entire book took place while Art Barbara was in high school, but he's graduated now, it's halfway through. And she says years later, they finally cross paths again. There was kind of a terrifying scene that at first I didn't think was terrifying because I like Mercy and I like Art. At least I like them enough to think that even if they were hurting each other, that it wouldn't be devious or cruel. But then it actually did get kind of scary, mostly because it was in the dark. I feel like that can really make anything scary. And I could see how if you don't like kind of slow paced books, this might be a little bit of a slow march for you at this point. But I really feel like we are getting so much detail, and I am loving it. I feel like I stopped at the perfect point of transition. I feel like things are about to change, and I feel like our characters are gonna change, and there's gonna be, the next chapter is from September 1989 to July of 2007. And then back and forth to the years between and 2007. So here we go. Just kidding. One more thing I have to say is that I love how self-aware this book is. So right now, Art Barbara is talking about his writing style and how the book started and how kind of pretentious it was in the beginning. But also Mercy is talking about a novel versus a memoir and the kind of stylized writing each one takes. And I love that shit. But also because Art Barbara is telling us to reread the first 2 pages of the novel, or the memoir. And he says there's an obviously manic desperation to make an instant impression on you, the reader. And that is definitely true. Okay, I'm on page 189 now, and that was a long ass chapter. And it was recounting Art's life in the last 15 years, sort of an interview style to Mercy, who has come into contact with him again. And no offense, but Art's life was a little sad and a little boring, especially recounting it. There is a lot about music in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, so that part was kind of fun, but I'm not that interested to read about it for over I don't even know how many pages I just read. However, there was a scene at the end there that was even more horrifying than the first horrifying scene. And this one was kind of scarier because of that first one. And now, because Mercy is so adamant that his account is wrong, you're like, who do we believe? I feel like up until the last Mercy input, I truly believed Art was telling the truth, even just 2 pages before. But now I'm like, maybe it's a mixture. So I'm gonna go on. We're now in 2014 and we'll see. It's getting a little late. So I'm wondering if I should stop and finish tomorrow when I'm a little less tired, but part of me really wants to finish it today because it's the last day of the month. So it's like, I want this on my wrap up. I'm gonna keep reading. I finished. I honestly don't know what to say, and I feel like I say that every time I finish a book, but this time it's actually real, and I think I'll just have to think about it overnight. But I will say that I'm now scared of ever wearing a jacket or owning a dresser ever again. Hey guys, it's the next morning. I thought about it, and I'm gonna give this 4 stars. So I really thought for some reason this was really gonna take place while he was in high school. So I was really taken by surprise when it really is kind of a memoir about his life, which I should have known. And in that case, I thought it did a really good job. It felt like a memoir. Also, it looks like there's gonna be something creepy coming out of my closet. No monsters in there, I promise. And though there wasn't much action in here, and I feel like that's what I've been seeing on Goodreads, that like nothing happened, it is a very kind of character building because we are getting this man's life in relation to the girl he met in the Pallbearers Club, as well as Mercy's edits. And sometimes, honestly, the best part about this book for me was how this was structured, how it was put together, and what it's talking about as itself, as a piece of fiction, as a piece of memoir, as a piece of writing. And that meta kind of feeling to it is the best part. It is kind of depressing though, because it's kind of like, I don't want to get old. I really like the beginning of this and how kind of fun it was and how funny it was. And then it kind of turned pretty serious. So I do love books like that, but part of me wishes that it had kept a little more humor throughout the book, but it's not that kind of book. It was perfect for what it was. I'm trying to figure out why I'm not giving this a 5-star, and I think it's just one of those books that's almost kind of like, I don't know, maybe on reread I would really love it, because it is definitely a book that I could reread because it is so much of someone's life. It almost feels kind of like Kaikei, which is a crazy comparison, or even Circe by Madeline Miller. Those two are totally different. Those two are mythological retellings, and this is like a sort of horror about kind of a sad man, but it does give that kind of slow-paced vibe. And I'm pretty sure at first I gave both those books like 4 stars as well, but they're books that I still think about today. I do think that Mercy's edits to this makes the book, which she even points out. And I really liked how kind of ambiguous it is, although it sort of isn't at the same time. In the end though, it really is up to you what you want to believe. I don't understand why the spoiler that I talked about, I don't know why it's not in the blurb in the book, because it's literally the entire book is about that, is about wondering about that. The coolest parts for me, besides, you know, Mercy's edits, was the kind of, what's that writing style where you just like, you write whatever comes to your head as it's like happening. There's a couple parts like that where Art is speaking and he's kind of boring you at one point, and then there's a total change and it's not very apparent because he doesn't use like indentation or paragraphs very well. So that kind of is really interesting because you're thinking like, oh my God, this guy just keeps going on, and then something happens and you're like, oh, whoa, what is happening? All in all, I'm very glad that I read these 2 books. And what a great end of my month. If you guys end up reading these books, or if you already have, let me know what you think, and I will see you in the next video.